Contestant 5, Chad Welsh. With his speech, "You gotta find your shoes." You gotta find your shoes, Chad Welsh.
So let me ask you, how would you handle it if someone stole something from you when you needed it the most? How would that affect your performance? What kind of emotions would you struggle with? What would your attitude be like? And truthfully, would you even bother wanting to show up at all? Well, all of those questions and more had to be answered by Mr. Jim Thorpe. Who was Jim Thorpe? Jim was one of the best athletes to ever lace up his shoes for the USA. Jim played professional football, basketball, and baseball, which is a feat in and of itself, but he's most well known for his endeavors in track and field. And it's the Summer Olympics in 1912 in Stockholm, and Jim Thorpe is getting ready to run some of the biggest races of his life. He's going to run for some gold medals. But see, it's an extra special day because Jim is a proud member of the Fox and Sac Nation, a group of indigenous people who call modern-day Oklahoma home. Jim is the first Native American to ever represent the U.S. in the Olympics. And the morning of the big race, he gets dressed, he gets ready to go, and he can't find his shoes. And see, the funny thing was, Jim and his teammates all locked up their equipment and their shoes the night before. But on the day of the big race, Jim's shoes are missing. Oh, and only Jim's shoes are missing. But it didn't matter because Jim had one job. He had to find his shoes. So Jim looks all over, finally comes across a pair of shoes. Only these shoes he came across, well, they weren't his original pair. As a matter of fact, these shoes he found, they weren't even the same pair of shoes. The left shoe was a completely different kind of shoe than the right. And to make matters worse, Jim found these shoes by having to rummage through a garbage can full of trash. But see, he was running out of time. He could hear the announcer from the stadium calling out, "Final call for the 100, the 200, the 400-meter races. Jim had to get to the stadium. So he takes the shoe, cleans it off the best that he can, puts it on, ties it up. Yeah, it fits. He puts on the other shoe, ties it up. Oh, the shoe is too big. As a matter of fact, he can't even keep his foot in the shoe. So what is he going to do? Well, Jim is a resourceful fellow, and he does the only thing left he can do. See, he had an extra pair of socks. So on the foot where the shoe was too big, he put on those socks, put on the shoe, tied it up. It was still a little big, but he gets to the stadium. He gets checked in. Everyone's asking him, "Jim, where have you been? You almost missed your races." To which Jim just smiles and nods because he knew first he had to find his shoes. So Jim gets in line with the rest of the Olympic runners as the Olympic official stands there, starter gun in hand, and yells, "On your marks, get set, go!" And Jim and the rest of the runners, whoosh, are off and running. So, Madam Contest Master, fellow Toastmasters, judges, and guests, I came away inspired by Jim Thorpe. Why? Because it made me think, what kind of attitude would I have the next time I faced a difficult hurdle in my life? What about you? See, I believe that no matter what it is you may be facing today, no matter what it is you may be suffering from, you can overcome it. But first, you just have to find your shoes. And see, those shoes to you can symbolize whatever it is in your life you're passionate about that you want to see made better. Maybe you've always dreamed of starting your own business, but you've been afraid, or maybe you started one in the past and it failed. Or maybe relationships are something that you're passionate about, but you've had some go sour this year, some personal or business or family relationships. You know what? Those things are okay because you got to get up. You got to find your shoes And you got to do all you can to get that business off the ground. And you got to do everything possible to live at peace with those people in those relationships, or have the courage to walk away. And I know, I can just hear some of you right now saying, but Chad, these shoes, I mean, they're not even my original pair. You know what? That's okay, because you got to get up, you got to find your shoes, and you got to go run that race. You may say, but Chad, these shoes, well, they stink and they're full of garbage. That's okay, because you got to get up, you got to find your shoes, and you got to go run that race. You may say, but Chad, these shoes, they don't fit right, and it may cause me to stumble, fall, or fail. That's okay, because you got to get up, you got to find your shoes, and you got to go run that race. No matter how hard and difficult life circumstances may be, don't ever let them prevent you from running the race of your life. Now, be like Jim Thorpe. See, I believe someone stole Jim's shoes that day because they wanted to make it a sad and disappointing day for him at the Olympics, and they succeeded. Well, they didn't succeed in doing that to Jim Thorpe, though. Now, see, Jim had trained too long. He had sacrificed too much to let himself down, to let down the country that he loved, and he especially wasn't going to let down his proud Sac and Fox Nation people, who, like the rest of us Native Americans, know the sting and the heartbreak of having something stolen from us and never rightfully returned. Now, that day at the Stockholm Games in 1912, Jim Thorpe got up, found his shoes, and he competed against the world's best athletes they had to offer, in shoes that weren't his, in shoes that didn't fit right, in shoes that weren't even the same pair, and in shoes he found in a garbage can. And that brother came back to the US of A with not one, but 2 gold medals. Now, Jim didn't win every race he had that day, but it didn't matter, because the important thing was he got up and he competed. And look, I know 2020 wasn't a banner year for most of us. It was filled with a lot of disappointment, destruction, and death. But I have good news. And that good news is, if you can see and hear me today, that means you are still living, you're still moving, and you're still breathing. And I believe all of us have some great things left in our lives still to accomplish. So what do you say? This day and this year and every day and year after, let's go run some races. But first, all you got to do is find your shoes. Madam Contest Master.